Good evening. Thank you for watching my presentation. For this week for Multi-Engine Flight, Aviation 430, we're going to be talking about our flight with friends from Minneapolis, Minnesota, down to Dallas, Texas, where we're going to be going to see the Vikings take on the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to be going over in this briefing. I'm going to be talking about managing risk, systems, and safety in my particular aircraft, which is the Diamond DA-42 Twin Star. We have one friend that's a little nervous to go flying, needs a little bit of reassurance. We have one friend that's extremely inquisitive, has a lot of questions for us, components of the aircraft, how things work, what sort of things go into the flight planning. So we're going to talk about how all of these things kind of come together to make this a safe and successful flight. Today's November 3rd, and we'll jump into it. So the scenario overview, Minneapolis to Dallas in our aircraft. It's a twin engine, FADEC controlled, twin diesel turbos. Our flight time down there is going to be about 6 hours, slightly longer. I've been planning for 3 fuel stops along the way. Last time I did my performance planning for this aircraft with an extra person in the back, we needed to take a little bit less fuel. We do have a couple considerations as far as route goes, getting over some mountains and making sure that we just have a safe flight. And 3 fuel stops to me seemed appropriate for this flight. Also, it gives us a chance to get out and stretch our legs a little bit. So, a single pilot, 2 passengers, and I already stated our objective there. So, first thing I want to talk about, single pilot resource management, SRM. This is a new concept to me. I come from a helicopter military background where we flew dual pilot all the time. Jumped into the fixed wing world. That was the first time I experienced single pilot operations, and single pilot resource management suddenly became very important. So that's being able to manage all of our resources both on board as well as off board the aircraft to ensure a safe and efficient flight. Some of the core skills involved are task management, making sure that you can handle passengers, your airplane, any sort of additional equipment you're using, such as ForeFlight on an iPad, checklists, making the best use of everything available so that you can effectively manage the entire flight. You're going to have to talk to air traffic controllers, you're going to have to talk to your passengers, you're going to have to diagnose the aircraft's condition at all times, make sure that it's operating safely, as well as, God forbid, you have an emergency, you need to be able to, identify that emergency, react appropriately, make the correct decisions in the moment to land safely somewhere. So for the aeronautical decision-making process, a couple models that go into it, we're all familiar with them from our past experiences, but they become even more important when we get into the single pilot resource management. So we have our PAVE, pilot aircraft environment external pressures. Those are things such as the I'm safe model. Definitely want to consider to or take into consideration I'm safe model when you're going out and flying with friends and you know that you're going to be single pilot and have a lot of things to handle at one time. You're going to want to have a thorough understanding of our MELs, our weather, airport routes, any sort of stressors that we have going on in our life. The decide model, also important: detect, estimate, choose, identify, do, and evaluate. And then from a single pilot resource management standpoint, the 5 Ps. So these, again, new to me, I'm going to dive into them a little bit. That's our plan, plane, pilot, passengers, and programming. So our plan is all the things that we've ever learned to do since becoming private pilots. That is planning our routes, that is looking at the weather, all those things I've already kind of touched on. As far as the plane goes, not making sure, or not just ensuring that the plane is ready, but also that you're proficient in that plane. It's kind of like currency versus proficiency. Pilot, again, I typically like the I'm safe acronym, making sure that you're comfortable, that you're in the right state of mind, that you're in the right physiological state for that flight. And then passengers, this is a new one. Once you get your license and you start taking up people, you need to understand the stressors that can come with passengers and the distractions that they present. Finally, is programming. So both panel-based as well as handheld equipment, such as ForeFlight, our avionics suite, it can be both helpful and distracting. So being really familiar, being really proficient with those tools can make your life really easy, but they can also be distracting while you're trying to manage all the different components of this flight. So risk identification and decision making. A couple things to take into account for this flight. We have our weather risk, so we're definitely going to want to be checking our TAFs, our meters along the way, as well as on the return flight. We got to get home safely as well. So what does the weather forecast look like when it goes out a little bit further? A lot of weather products out there that can help us out. Terrain risk, so we have the Ozark Mountains to consider. Environmental risk, we have a potential night arrival into Dallas Love Field. Mitigations for these, so all of these things that we've kind of considered about this flight, I would personally consider doing an IFR flight plan. I think it really takes a lot of the burden off of the pilot as they're flying a single pilot. You're going to have one passenger who's a little anxious, and you can reassure them that you're under, direct control with ATC for the entire flight. You have one passenger that's going to be asking you a lot of questions, and so if you can be on an IFR flight plan, it might simplify your life throughout that flight. Take a little bit extra fuel for the routes, and already have your alternates pre-selected, I think, is another important mitigation. Both for the airports you're flying into, weather, might be good along the way, but already knowing alternates along the route. In the event that you do have a potential emergency that you want to consider, where can you land, where can you get services, just kind of having those highlighted along on your ForeFlight or within your autopilot system can be really important. So automation and task management, the DA42 features a G1000 avionics system, has FADEC, autopilot. There's a lot of things that help make our life a little bit easier. I would go ahead and pre-flight program into our avionics suite all of our flight plan, our fuel checks, performance data, make sure all of that's in there and set for our flight. As always, aviate, navigate, communicate is important, and I personally like to involve my passengers as much as possible. I include it as part of my brief prior to takeoff, as far as engine failures go. I have them know that throughout the flight, I might ask them to verify things for me and get them involved. Does a couple things, takes their mind off of the emergency that's happening. I've always maintained a pretty cool, calm, collected demeanor when I've been flying, especially dealing with emergencies. I've had real life emergencies, and I think that, my demeanor really facilitates well having a passenger on board that might be a little bit nervous. I could like to keep them involved. Hey, if I had an engine failure, God forbid, but, verify that this says engine one here. I just got to shut that thing down. We're all good. Everything's okay. But just back me up here. Okay, I'm going to do this. Just double check that for me. Here's a checklist. Can you just read these couple items for me? Helps get them involved and make them feel like they're part of that flight, which I think is really important. Diving into some of the systems, I know one of our passengers is really interested about this aircraft. I'm going to do this during the pre-flight. I'm going to take that passenger, bring them over to the airplane, let them ask all the questions they want to ask. Get 90% of them out of the way prior to this flight even happening. We have a TAE 125, 99 turbo diesel, liquid cooled. I can hit all the buzzwords. It's a 4-cylinder, constant speed propeller. Talk about the fuel systems, how much fuel it can hold, how much we're going to take, and why. That helps them to understand why we're not filling up the tanks completely, why we're making a couple additional stops. Talk to them about the electrical system, how it works. We got the dual alternators, the dual batteries. Talk to them about the landing gear. It's new for me, so I would be excited to talk to them about how that all works. Our brake system, flaps, environmentals, de-ice, avionics. There's so many system components, and I would do it all during the pre-flight and have that person looking at all of those with me so that they can ask questions. I'm going to take that into account. I'm going to get to the airport a little bit earlier, ensure that they get there a little bit earlier so that we can go over that in great detail, and I can do a thorough pre-flight while also educating my passenger that's interested on all this. Might also bring the person who's a little bit nervous and talk to them about some of the systems and how they keep us safer. Diving into some of the emergency procedures, I'm going to go over some engine electrical ones. Again, I'm going to go over these with my passengers during the pre-flight process. Hey, if we lose an engine, it's not a big deal. We have a second one. But here are the important parts to know about an engine failure and at what phase of flight we're in, how we're going to react differently to something like that. I'll go back for a quick second. All right, so ADM example, the engine failure en route. This is the scenario I came up with here. It's just that, our right engine happened to fail while we were over the state of Oklahoma. What are we going to do? So we have a couple options. We can continue single engine to our destination. We can divert to a near suitable airport, or we could declare an emergency and land in the field or on the road right below us. my personal decision here, I'm going to let them know that we're going to declare an emergency. We're going to divert to the nearest airport. It's the safest, it's the most conservative. We can land somewhere. We have power to continue. If for some reason I was worried about fuel contamination or, I'm seeing similar sort of engine performance out of my second still functioning engine, that might change my decision in the moment. But in this situation, I'm going to declare an emergency. I'm going to divert. I'm going to get services, figure out what happened. So I'm taking the 5 P's into consideration there. I'm taking my decide model into consideration as well. Situational awareness, CFIT avoidance. We have our synthetic vision. We've got our G1000. We've got our the synthetic vision on our ForeFlight. I'm going to make sure that we're maintaining all of our MSAs. I'm going to keep us on that IFR flight plan, and I'm going to try to stay ahead of the aircraft. What's next? And I'm going to get those passengers involved in what to expect next as well. Demonstration of the single resource management system. So during this flight from Minneapolis to Dallas, I've demonstrated risk and task management, automation of our systems, ADM models, how we make decisions, and I'm going to maintain that calm, competent leadership while including my passengers in the process. Proverbs 21:5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Flying the DA-42 safely reflects diligence, preparation. SRM really embodies that. Making disciplined decisions is important, and we need to trust in God for what lies beyond our control. Are my references. Appreciate you watching.